Hello, my friends. This is life coach Mike Trugman, and welcome to an episode of Mike's Search for Meaning. I'm after some big questions. Why are we here? What makes a fulfilling life? How can we grow individually and collectively? Each episode, I'll dive deep with leaders who are doing great work in the world and see how they organize their life. Books read, value systems, resources used, and stories that show how each of you can create the life and the world of your dreams. Well, Ariane, welcome to Mike's Search for Meaning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mike. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Me too. And
Here
the long
we
time
are.
we waited.
Here we are. Perfect timing.
Multiple reschedules and a lot of life happening. And on a podcast where we're going to ostensibly talk about spirituality, it actually feels quite fitting that the universe did all sorts of things before we ended up arriving here together.
That's true.
So there's so many places that we could start. I'm curious, as someone who has lived and traveled around the world, if someone asks you the basic question, where are you from? How might you respond to said question?
You know, I've been asked that a lot in my many decades on the planet. And when I was younger, it always bothered me because I didn't know and I felt like something was wrong with me. So the facts are, I was born in New York City. I have a French mother and a Belgian father. And I grew up in the US, in Europe, and in Asia. So I, by the age of 16, had gone to 3 continents and 6 schools. And it always made me feel strange that I didn't have any roots. And people made it known to me that I didn't have any roots. And so it was always a bit of a quest for me, which is, what is this roots business? And does it really matter? And I think what life has told me now is that my roots are inside of me, for sure. And that my roots and where I'm from and where home is when I'm with people that feel like home. And that can happen in New York, and it can happen in Switzerland, it can happen in Cape Town, and it can happen in anywhere, Washington or Seattle or New Jersey or wherever it is that life is taking me. But I've found my peace with knowing that I can land somewhere, even if I've never been there, and it can feel like home. So I can tell you physically where I'm located right now, which is where I'm from. I am in New York right now. I think as a family, we've made it important to us to feel more global and nomadic and part of the world than picking one place. So currently we are traveling a lot, let's put it that way. But I think that where you're from it depends a little bit on what's going on for you currently also in your life. I'm not attached to 4 walls or a country or a particular tribe. And it's taken me a while to get there.
What's it been like to raise a son? So your son is 12 years old, is that right?
Yeah, I turned 12 a couple of weeks ago.
Well, happy belated birthday, Everest. What's it been like for him and you to raise someone who is really a citizen of the world? And there's a really interesting moment in there where we were talking about the facts, like I was born in New York City and then I moved here, lived there, and how home really is located within yourself, and that roots is something I could feel it as you were talking there, that home is available anywhere I go, essentially.
Yes.
So how have you gone about living a nomadic type of life and instilling that type of internal landscape with Everest?
Of course. A lot of people ask me that, and they question sometimes, does he have stability? And does he have safety? And what's it like for him to change schools? He's been to 5 schools by the age of 12. Everest was born in Cape Town, South Africa, and he has 5 passports. We haven't gotten him the passports because they're expensive, but he is registered in all those places and those embassies. So I think from the get-go, he has always seen himself in a multi-language household. in a multicultural household, in a even spiritual household. You know, we have not brought him up in one particular religion, because to be part of the world, I think you need to understand all religions, and not kind of go, you're this and not that. So we have shared with him the stories of, you know, everything from Judaism to Catholicism to Hinduism to Buddhism to, it's like all of them. And they all feel, for him, if you spoke to him, they all feel like doors into the same room. It's just some people take this door and some people this door. But to him, I remember asking him during COVID, because, you know, we do speak about being part of the world, and we do speak about oneness, and we do speak about spirituality a lot in our household. I remember saying to him, Everest, you know, if you had to, plus we had nothing to do during COVID. I said to him, if you had to draw me what God is, like draw it on a piece of paper. And I gave him a white piece of paper. And I was very curious what he was going to draw. You know, it's like, what would your child draw? Like, they've heard about what that is. And he wrote one word, and then he put a whole bunch of different colors across it. And he wrote the word everything with a whole bunch of colors around it. And I thought, wow, isn't that amazing? Do you see? Because yes. For him, it's everything. It's everything. It's everywhere. I never told him that. I'm still trying to learn the journey that God is everything, which means it's in everyone and every being. And so I think, you know, to come back to what it is for him, I think children are glued to your energy, and they're glued to your inner dialogue, and they're glued to your level of consciousness. So that's what I'm constantly checking in with myself. They're not glued into, here's a school in New York or here's a school in Kenya. They're glued to, how do my parents feel about this? And I guess if they are good at change instead of fearful of change, then they naturally also become good at change. I mean, we have a joke in our household where we work on our change muscles quite a bit in our household. Because, you know, right now he's in New York in a brand new school for 4 months. And there, you know, it takes him a couple of days to kind of go, wow, new place, new school, new friendships, new rules, new restrictions. I think for him, life is a big adventure as opposed to being in one place.
Yeah. Why did you call your son Everest? This was, and just to give context for where this is like not a typical Mike Trubman question, but there's an intake question that every guest does, and I always ask, what's one question you'd love to be asked? And Ariane asked, what the question that you'd love to be asked is, why did I call my son Everest? So it feels like a good time to introduce the question. Why did you call him Everest?
So there's a couple of things. I didn't know if we were going to have a boy or girl. We wanted the surprise. We had lots of girl names. We had no boys' names. There's one thing I knew across the board for us, which is I wanted to give him a name that was a blank slate. I didn't want to give him a family name. I didn't want to give him an inherited name. I didn't want to give him a name that was expected from either my husband's side or my side that had some sort of loyalty attached to it. It was important for him to have that level of freedom. And there's nothing wrong with it. It was just a choice. It was more of it feels like something I want to give him to start his journey on the planet instead of the grandfather's name or, you know, the person, you know, where we want to give that name. Everest, I also knew I wanted a name to do with nature, and I wanted a name that was inspiring. And I do believe in the power of names. I really believe that there is some strength in who you are and what you are through your name, whether it's your first name, middle name, last name, either one. And I also wanted a name that had some spiritual significance, because spirituality has been sort of a through line through my whole life. And I thought, how amazing would that be? And if you've ever been to Nepal or Tibet, Everest is a very spiritual mountain for them. They do not see it as a climbing mountain. They see it as a very spiritual mountain. They're blessings. They put prayer flags there. They pray to Everest. Everest is a female mountain. right? It's a feminine mountain at that part of the world.
Mm.
So all of that was there. We certainly didn't come up with the name. And here's what happened. I was nearly 9 months pregnant at the time. We still had no names. And my sweet husband thought that when we had a child, we'd never go out for dinner again and we'd never have a drink again, even though I wasn't drinking. And so we went to Cape Town to this beautiful hotel called the One and Only, which is very fitting for the word name Everest. And when we walked in there was this giant poster, beautiful, and it said Everest, South Africa's first woman to climb. And she was speaking there on my due date.
Mm.
And there was something about the name and the word, and probably my son kicking at the time, where I sort of like poked my husband. I was like, Everest, that's such a good name for a kid. And he looked at me. I can remember this. He looked at me and he goes, my love, you're 9 months pregnant. That is not a name. You're very hormonal. Everest is not a name. And I was like, no, but that's his name. That's his name. I'm sure it's his name. So my poor husband was like, okay, we're going to have to deal with this too now. Anyway, so I kind of parked it and I thought, okay, well, that's, I wanted it to be a joint choice. I don't think I should have imposed the name. So Everest was born 12 days later and we had no name. And they let us take him out of the hospital with no name. And in South Africa, you have to register your child in 30 days. And day 28, we still don't have a name. I'm convinced 100% this child is Everest. He's a 10-pound baby. He looks like he would carry this name well. But I was like talking to this newborn and going, if your name is Everest, you're going to have to go tell your father because he's not 100% convinced. And so we had a little bit of energetic exchange. Because I do think children sometimes choose their name and they make it very clear what their name is. And so day 29 rocks around and my husband goes, I think we'll call him Everest. I think it makes sense. God bless him. But then the funny part, Mike, is we go to register him at Home Affairs and, we're very excited and it's our first one. And, we put in the name. And in South Africa, you have to have a middle name. So we look at each other and we're like, oh no, we don't have a middle name. So we went through a whole, exactly. We went through all these names that didn't really fit. And then we gave him the name Christopher because it's the patron saint of travel. And we are such a traveling family. My husband and I met in Cambodia. We traveled together for a year and it felt like the being, or at least the energy that we wanted around us, was to have the patron saint of travel with us. Very symbolic.
What do you think shifted? What happened on day 29 with your husband? I don't know if that's conjecture or if he said what happened for him, but like what happened there?
I don't know if I've ever asked him. I think my husband meditates morning and evening. And I think he probably checked in. He checked in with, that place for him, that realm for him. And he wanted to make sure that it was a yes and it was right. And I'm much more impulsive. That's it. It's definitely his name. My husband's much more of a sort of check-in. I want to feel into this. I want to make sure it's right. This is a choice for a child. How does it feel to give that name? I think that's one. And then I also, speaking for him, I think he also had to make his peace with the loyalty of having a name that had nothing to do with either one of us, nothing to do with our backgrounds, culturally, socially, family-wise, and kind of stepping into my loyalty is to this child and it's to this family and it's to what this is going to be and create, which is very different than the loyalty of what we've been told our children should be, or our children should be called, or where our children should go to school. I think there was a little bit intuitively of a sort of, he's married to me, right? There's a little bit of an intuitive, there needs to be a change between past loyalties and present day choices.
Yeah. This sets the table really well for a lot of the terrain that we're going to cover today. So something that I have become obsessed with, and it seems like you share my obsession, is how does one have a rich spiritual life where we feel the freedom to name our son Everest when it's not tied to a family name or a quote unquote normal name? How does one like really look within themselves and be a citizen of the world and care about the greater good of people and be a deeply spiritual person while being an integrated member of society? One who, and I've heard you speak really beautifully about how spirituality is not like, all right, Mike is spiritual, so he's growing a beard and he just rocks crystals all day. And like, I've become obsessed with the question of how does one really participate in the world while being a really spiritual person.
Yeah.
And so I guess before we even get into that, when did that start to be something that you paid attention to? Like, when I know that in your as you were growing up and then coming into college age and professional worlds, that the lives were kind of separate. Like, there was a part of you that was really longing for something, but also on paper, like you were just like doing the thing, checking the boxes, getting the degrees. So when did your search start to begin? And we can go from there. I know it was a lot.
Yeah. There is a lot there. So, I grew up in a family where I was brought up to fit in to life, which is you get good grades, you go to a good college, you marry the right guy, you have the 2 kids, and you live safe. You're not like the sacred rebel. You're not, you don't kind of break those traditions too much. And it came from a really good place. And usually it does come from a really good place, which is, this is what the world is. This is what the world requires. And as a parent, I'm going to bring up a child that does that. So bless my parents and thank you for the gifts of extraordinary education, extraordinary, beliefs that they gave me. And there came a time where those were not my beliefs anymore. And I think I needed to question, is this ladder that I'm climbing professionally, is this my choice? Is it what I've been told as a woman to go do because women have to now climb this big ladder? Is it to, get one of my parents' love and approval? Is it to prove myself? I mean, all that stuff was messy, right? So that was all the way through my 20s. In parallel, while I was getting the Stanford MBAs and I was, in venture capital and had all of that, and I don't need to go back there unless you want me to. There was a real yearning for, there must be another way. There must be another life. There must be ways where I can, learn things that I didn't learn at school, learn things that I didn't learn in my home environment. And the search was very simple. It started with books. It started with, cassette tapes. It started with CDs. It started with then going to 1 or 2 hour-long events here and there. But to use a term I've used a few times now, I was definitely in the spiritual closet. Like, I was not opening that up to boyfriends or bosses or my family. A few friends knew about it. But it really was a little bit of a hidden search because I didn't see people who had both at the same time. It didn't feel integrated. It still felt like I needed at some point to choose. Either you're going to be big in the world or you're going to go be spiritual. Either you're going to go, live in India or you're going to be in New York City. Like, there was no merging of the two. And so for me, that lasted, I'd say, a good 10 years of not kind of bringing it up and hiding the books and the journals and the meditation and the prayer beads. And I thought, I can continue doing this. And then at some point, there's a part of you that doesn't allow you to continue doing this because you're not living in your truth and you're not aligned. And so the work became impossible. The dating became impossible. Even being in my physical body became hard for me. I had weight on me because I think unconsciously I was kind of going, well, I'm going to hide, right? So weight is a hiding technique, at least it was for me. So I was like, I'm going to hide what's really going on, which is I'm questioning kind of everything. Then I started getting eczema which is again the body speaking the truth, which is, there's a burning desire. There's something else there. You're going against yourself, right? And so at some point I was just like, okay, this is not, I'm not being in my truth anymore. And, my intuition was going off so loud that I actually couldn't turn it off anymore. I think you can turn it down, but you can't really fully turn it off. And then I got down on my knees and I really asked for guidance. And I said, make it so, so, so clear to me that a 5-year-old would know what to do. Do I leave the job? Do I leave the relationship I was in? I got pretty strong yeses on both of those, which pissed me off because I was like, why can't I do it all? Why can't I have at the time, it looked like it had to be a choice. It didn't look like these are not aligned with who you are. The work isn't at your frequency. This man isn't at your frequency. He certainly is for someone else. So I did leave the job. I did leave the relationship, and I left New York City, to be honest, because New York was my identity. It told me who I was. It told me how to dress. It told me how to be. It told me who to date. It told me how much money I should make. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I need to more of an identity shift, I need to go somewhere where I haven't been told anything really. So I went to Italy. And there began a little bit of more of a journey inwards than a journey outwards, because my external world and my inner world were also separate, right? My external world looked amazing. I was happy and I was successful and everything was amazing. And my inner world was like, I'm unhappy, I'm unhealthy, I don't feel successful, I don't feel I'm on my path. So it wasn't just, the material and the spiritual that needed to come together. It was my external, my internal needed to come together. And my masculine and my feminine needed to come together. So there was lots of things that I saw in two separate ways or two separate worlds. And I've affectionately called it a foot in both worlds. I even have a nearly finished book called A Foot in Both Worlds. And the only reason I haven't published it is it's the wrong title, because there are no two worlds. But it is my journey of being fully in the material world. And then what I did after I left the big job and broke off the engagement is I went fully in the spiritual world, because I still thought that was where my future had to be. And so I did the retreats and I did the Vipassanas and the 10-day silence and the giving back and the nonprofit, and I wore white and I had prayer beads and I went to India. And I was like, well, if this isn't a yes, then maybe that's what my soul is calling for. So I had to explore the extreme of the other world as well. And that's who I wanted to be with. And that's what I wanted my friends to be. And I certainly judged people who were still in that world, and because I was still human. But so that took a few years. And then I was like, this cannot be right, that, one part's right and one part's wrong, or one part is, aligned with truth and divine and spirit, or whatever we want to call it, and one part isn't. And to my son's point that it's everything, he got it age 6 and I got it age probably, early 30s. But it took me a while to sort of realize that, one, there was no two worlds, and two, nothing was going to happen to me if I came out of the closet. It's not like I was going to, not have anyone to be in relationship or not have work that was going to feel right to me. And I think the fear is, what's going to happen if people know that I meditate, or that I like going to retreats, or that, these things are really important to me? Like, really, what's going to happen? People don't really care. They're like, oh, that's interesting. And even if they do have a commentary about it, I can tell you that 100% of those people over time have shown interest, have shown curiosity, have also gone to an event that I've suggested, or read a book that has truly, inspired me. So if anything, you become an example, at whatever timeline they're on. And I think nowadays, I love, the journey of living in New York City with kids, with the craziness, with the mess, with the arguments, with, paying taxes, with everything.
Mm-hmm.
and going, how do I put, a spiritual lens through all of it, as opposed to when can I escape on the weekends so that I don't have to deal with this stuff, right? There's no escape. It's like if something's going on with my son at school, there's the inner conversation is always, okay, what's here for us? What's here to learn? Why is this happening? What's the opportunity? What does he need to see? What's the gift? Do you see? It's like there's 50 questions, but those questions can only show up, if you have the inner environment for them, because externally they suck and they're annoying and they're difficult and they make you pissed off.
Yeah.
It does help, Mike, that I did choose a man to share my life with who has the same filter and perspective, because I do think it would be hard if we came at it two different ways. It doesn't mean we have the same path or the same teachers or the same books. I do think the environment in which you're in, it either helps fertilize that or it helps make it somewhat difficult sometimes. And the last thing I will say on this point is, I think we're at a critical time in the world where more and more people need to step out from hiding in plain sight, because there are a lot of people hiding. I know them personally. I know them professionally. I know that people think it's a risk. I think it's much more of a risk to them, and their life and their health and their truth and their career and their future than anything else. And it's a big invitation I have, which is just share it. Just say what's important. And you don't know who you're going to affect by saying that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say a bunch of things here and we'll see on the other side of it. You can kind of take it in whatever direction you want to take it. You started to point to, so maybe one observation is that the kind of dichotomy of a foot in both worlds and how we can easily poke at that. Just the questions that you rattled off are highly practical, useful questions to navigate the challenges of life. And so that's something that I have worked a lot on in terms of, it still feels like an ongoing journey for me of this, like they're not these like perfectly integrated, I live in one world that is both material and spiritual and inclusive of all the things. And I think it's a service to people to know that spirituality is highly practical in that you can ask questions like, what is this here to teach me? What is the gift in this? That just objectively is a much more generative, better, in my opinion, better way to be living than to feel like a victim. No one likes to feel like a victim. It's just kind of the path that a lot of us have been taught. So just that's
Absolutely.
one.
And it is highly practical, because wherever it is you choose to live, whether you choose to have kids, not have kids, be married, not have married, be buried, life is going to ask of you to learn and to grow and to heal and to look at emotions and to deal with people. And it's like, so you can't escape it. It's like,
Yes.
It's like we're all kind of in it no matter what. I don't need anyone to call themselves spiritual. I don't need anyone to change their work, change their relationship, change what they wear. I don't need anyone to ever go to India. Like, none of that stuff matters. I like it. It's a choice. Some of it I love, some of it I don't. Some of it's got way too strong of a label. And I think the labeling has hurt more than, I think, most of the people that I know that I meet. I know that we all have a spirit, and that is the part that I crave and I want to connect with in people. I don't crave spiritual people. I crave being with people who are in touch with their spirit. I don't crave people who are connected to whoever they want to call it. I crave people who their spirit is alive. They're feeling fully in the world.
Yeah.
Do you see? That's very different.
Yes.
It's like, well, I'm not a spiritual person. Let me check out. It's like, there is no such thing as someone that doesn't have that going on. It's just, for some, it's a lot more what's driving the life. And for some, it's the mind that's driving the life, or it's the loyalty that's driving the life, or it's fear that's driving the life. But it's not that sense of my spirit's alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you will be poked. You are
Yeah.
going to be poked, in many
Yes.
ways. So it's not that my life is easier or harder. I've been poked a lot, from my childhood onwards. But it's, to me, your relationship to life is your life.
Yes.
So if your relationship to life is on my side, then life will be on your side, even with the tough stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see yourself through it. If, life is not on my side and I'm unlucky, and why is it like that? Is your relationship to life. There's no
Yeah.
need for even a spiritual conversation around it. We're all having a life, and we all have consciousness.
Yeah.
It's like, even it's been proved scientifically there is consciousness, and
Mm-hmm.
we are energetic vibrational beings that give off a frequency. So we can have the scientific words that go with this conversation too, and I think it's important to see that there's no need for the word.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need for the word, which is why I'm still looking, if anyone has an idea for the title for this book, of how to bring these together where everyone is on a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. One question that's occurring in me, like maybe if I dial back the clock a little bit on my background and my previous skepticism and very entrenched, firm beliefs in being pragmatic, material, rational, etc. My initial career was in tax accounting, and yeah, my mom was always like kind of I thought she was off her rocker a little bit. Revealing myself to my mom if she listens to this episode. I didn't think she was off her rocker, but like she would talk about a book like The Secret and Manifestation, and I just felt like that is nonsense. Like it doesn't make any sense to me that you would get signals from the universe, or
Yep.
that you'd be able to manifest your life or whatever, things like that. And accounting obviously was a profession where at a very initial high level didn't require any sort of spirituality for me. It's a very pragmatic left brain, kind of following the way that our U.S. education system is you learn things. It's very mind driven. Anyway, that's just a little bit of a backdrop on, for someone like a past version of myself, or I was thinking, we'll take like NFL football players or something like that, where it would be probably doesn't on a surface level seem like pragmatic in any way. B, the type of thing that, if it's an NFL player, if they're voicing their spirituality or their connection to their emotions in the locker room, is like, I could easily see that being ridiculed. And the same when I was at my accounting firm, like I didn't feel the safety to talk about that. So when we talk about coming out of the spiritual closet, I'm trying to get my arms around what have you found to be effective ways to introduce this in worlds where it might be a little bit more taboo, etc.
I mean, it's interesting you use the sporting analogy. I have never, I was lucky enough to go to the Paris Olympics last year. I've been to a lot of tennis events. I used to be an athlete, so I'm very driven by sport. The high majority of athletes pray. Okay.
Uh-huh.
At that level.
Yes.
And sometimes they pray visibly. You will see
Uh-huh.
it. Nearly every rugby player and soccer player does the sign of the cross, whether you believe in that or not. So there are very visible signs.
Yeah.
Of that. We might call it, well, that's acceptable and this is not. And you see that again, that's a split in us.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I've coached some athletes where that is their place that they land through a win and through a loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so to not have that be, something that they can own or show, I think people are a lot more open and tolerant than what we fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because even when you're questioned, Mike, there's a fear and there's a, what are people going to think? I always say, that people respond to you the way you respond to yourself and how you feel. So if I'm scared of saying something to you, the likelihood of you, mirroring back what I feel is very high.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So to me, there's a sense of the fear of ridicule is likely to have you be ridiculed. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Instead of, yep, dude, this is super important to me. It's made a huge difference in my life. Do you see? So it is how you, how it settles in you. And actually, in any argument or in any conversation or in any negotiation, the person who is the most certain wins. I learned that at Stanford Business School. One of the great things I learned there. But it's true. So if I'm really certain that, meditation is important, my certainty actually will be more important than me trying to tell you anything about meditation. So there's no convincing, there's no inviting, there's no anything. It's just, dude, it really works.
Yeah.
That's it. Do you see? So, and then and there's a curiosity about it. I think that the fear is, I need to convince, or I need to be right, or I need to explain, or I need to tell them why I do it. That's not what I said. To me, it's just more, it's like, I drink green juices. They really work. I mean, we can do an entire hour on, just green juices and all the things health-wise that I've done that are amazing. I don't need anyone to do a green juice. And I will tell them they really help.
Yeah.
And it's more for, the invitation is to try it and to be open-minded. It's not to convince and I'm right. That's where the difference is. And it has to do with every and any industry. I mean, I have clients in industries that would be considered very far from this topic. And yet, I think one of the reasons they work with me is because they want to feel awake and alive. And I don't call it spiritual awakening or coaching, or I want to move away from all of those things. But I do want people to be aligned with something that they know is there for them in however form that looks. That's the invitation.
Yeah, I love it. So as we continue to zoom in on how does one just integrate in all the ways, I'm curious, as you've navigated letting go of the structures that were not serving you, that were given to you, and created your own structures in the different domains. So parenthood, money, work, marriage, like there's all the different things. Someone could probably still look at your life on paper and be like,
it's very weird.
People could say weird, but people could also be like, oh, she's married and is a leadership coach and like works with athletes and, like make it look like a quote unquote normal fitting into society's
very
definition of a good. I'm curious, like how you look at, we could go domain by domain. We've got time and space for this. So like, let's start with parenthood, because that was one that you introduced as a topic that's really meaningful to you. How have you addressed the, maybe there's like certain ways that people were conditioned to be parents, and now there's the way that you have located within your roots and yourself around parenthood. How do you look at parenthood?
Yeah, I love this question, because if we weren't having this conversation, you'd think I had a very, integrated, normal, in the world life. If you, spied on me for the next 30 days, you might even say I was normal. in all ways, in all those domains, whether it's money conversations, whether it's, fights, whether it's, issues going on in the world. So the idea is not to be different externally. The idea is not to be better than. The idea is not to stand out. The idea is not to check out. The idea is not to judge others. The idea is for the inner environment in which you live in this world is what has changed, And that's the big difference. I think most people think spirituality is an external thing. this is what they wear, and these are the bracelets they have, or this is who they externally, it's an internal change. And it took me a while, because I definitely was doing all the external things for a while, and I had prayer flags, and I had all of those things. Prayer flags are beautiful. Do I need them? No. I went to Bhutan last year. I got beautiful prayer flags blessed. That's a beautiful thing. It's a symbol. It's just a souvenir in some ways that means something. Do you see? So there's a difference between how it looks and how it is on the inside. We got to get away from the how it looks.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised if I could mention some of the big CEOs and big celebrities that are all of what we're speaking about, because you would never know externally, but internally they're very, very different. So let's talk about parenting. So for parenting, I think the biggest gift you can give your child is one, for you to be happy yourself, because you parent from that place. And so everything and anything that is in the way of that for me is something that I would like to clean up. So if emotionally I've got anger or grief or frustration or rage, which I do, by the way, I'm just as human as everyone else, it is up to me to clean that up, right? That's a internal choice. You want to call it, self-growth or whatever we want to put a name on it, because otherwise I'm going to parent from that place. Another thing that's been important with our son is to make him realize that the world is a loving place and a friendly place. And that there are good people and kind people, and things will work out, and things will be hard, and there will be lessons, and people will come across his path, and that there are gifts and teachings everywhere. To let him know that my husband and I are not his only two sources of love and safety. That, as we all know, things happen in life, and there's trauma and tragedy and breakups, and it's like we don't know where life is going. And so to give him the assurance that this is a world where there are many, many sources of love and safety for him, again, to me feels more like a broader concept. I'm not going to even use the word spiritual concept, but a lot of people are like, here's your safe space, here's your family, family's everything, this is your source of love. I want them to know that, not only are there physical beings that basically will show up for him in his life, as they have for you, Mike, as they have for me, but also that there might be an invisible realm that, has his back. And he can call it what he wants. He can look at it as he wants. He can call it guides, guidance, angels, beings, nature, love, energy. I don't care what he calls it. It's all the same thing. But for him to feel like, wow, that's what he walks in the world with, I think that I would have wanted to have that. I have it now after knowing that I had to go look for it. And my parents did not know, and they still don't know, that it is possible to walk in the world that way. I don't think I could have made the big choices and the big changes without knowing that there is a part of me that will always be taken care of, always be safe, always be aligned, always be connected to. And I say this all the time. I wrote a book on change. One of the things that I saw from interviewing over 1,000 people was that people who successfully navigate change know that there's something bigger going on. They all said it in some ways, whether they lost their home in a fire, whether they got divorced, whether they lost a loved one, whether they fought depression, whether they were raped, whatever it was. They all said, I felt like there was something bigger going on. They didn't all point to the same thing. And so it allows you to go through not only life changes, but they also said, I had to find the part of myself that did not change. When the marriage had changed, when the health had changed, when the financials, I had to find the part of myself that did not change. That to me is gold. That to me is treasure inside. And I have tried to show my son that whether, I'm here on a business trip, or whether he is in Europe, the US, or wherever, that there is a part of him that will never change. Even though the external surroundings and world is changing very fast, especially
Yeah.
for this generation. That to me is that's a place where I parent from. I don't parent from a place of superiority. I parent from what I call the three. There's three ways of parenting, and there's three trust levels in parenting, and all three are required. You must trust your child. You must trust yourself. Oh, I'm getting a thumbs up on my thing. I love that.
Cool, Riverside. Thanks for that.
You must trust your child. You must trust yourself, and you must trust life, because life is the third parent, or the second parent if there's only one parent. And I'm always asking myself, which one do I need right now? Do I need to trust Everest more? Do I need to trust myself more in this choice and decision? Or do I need to trust life more? Because right now he's not with me, right? He's in regular school like everyone else. He's not in some special, whatever, consciousness school. He's in regular school. And so right now, while I'm not around to influence or guide or do whatever it is that we do as parents, the thing that I'm putting my trust in now is the third parent. But that's a huge invitation, which is we put a lot of trust in Everest, and we put a lot of trust in ourselves, and we put a lot of trust in life. That's the parenting framework for us. There's a lot more I can say, but I'm going to let you ask questions.
Well, you don't have to answer anything that is, we can cut out if it's not a useful question. I'm curious if there's specific examples that come to mind in each one of those three, i.e., is there a time that a specific story or instance that you can remember where you remember leaning into trusting myself and a parenting decision you made from there? A time where, this is the one that I'm most interested in, where you trusted Everett, and Everett maybe overrode something that was being dictated or said to him, and a time where life was the parent. Like, are there instances that come to mind?
Absolutely. The one, well, here's the thing. There's a few that combine sometimes. So when Everest was 6 years old, I mean, especially when you've been given the name Everest, Everest is good at climbing. So Everest climbs trees that are like 50 feet, and then he likes climbing rocks. But when we were living in New York, he was 5, 6 years old, and he decided over one of the reservoirs and pond to climb a tree that was kind of over the reservoir. It was a dead tree that had fallen. And it was November, so it was cold. I didn't have any spare clothes. Everest can swim. And I thought, okay, I'm going to trust him to climb this tree, right, over the water. And I could hear there was like parents behind me going, crazy, she's nuts. This is a little guy, right? And clearly, the biggest risk is that he falls in the water, right? So I associated risk. And I thought, am I going to tell him no based on what? That I either don't trust him, which is how a child would have heard it. Mom doesn't trust me. That's how he will hear it. So I don't want to instill that in him. I do trust him. But then I also have to trust life, which is if he's meant to fall in the water, he's going to fall in the water and he'll be okay. So I had to activate both of those. And I have to trust myself that there is not a huge risk here in me letting him go. So all three are involved. So of course he climbs the tree. And then one of the kids that was watching him shouts, "Snapper turtle." So there's these big snapper turtles in Central Park. And at that moment, Everest lets go. Right? And of course he falls in the water and he's soaking wet. And there probably was not a snapper turtle. I still don't know to this day if there was a snapper turtle. But now he's soaking wet. The parents are horrified behind me, right? As if they had proven their point. I'm not worried at all. Everest, comes out. He's a little shaken. But do you see, it was a life lesson. I trusted him. I would still trust him to walk the tree. We went back 2 days later. He did go home in wet clothes. But do you see, there were so many things involved there.
Yeah.
Instead of him having a tantrum, Mom, you don't trust me. And for him, it was his way of experiencing his body. And I think a lot of children experience life through their body. They don't experience life through words or through the mind or through books. I let him experience life through his body. And from that place, I could say, wow, what did we learn? We learned to not listen to kids shouting snapper turtles. We did not learn don't climb a tree.
Mm-hmm.
We did not learn, wow, it's cold water. Do you see? So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's how you work with the situations in life. I mean, we still laugh about it. I even wrote an article on Psychology Today about it because there was so much juice in that. Here's another one, you know, Everest is a bit of an extreme skier. This is a kid who does backflips on skis and 720 and tail grabs and whatever it is. I don't even know what they are anymore. It takes a lot as a parent to let your child do those things. There are times I have prayed for a child that just plays the guitar or plays chess. That is not the child I've been given.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I've been able to do from a parenting perspective. I can't tell him no unless there is a real threat. I would probably tell him no if he wants to base jump, you know, not now. But I do know that he is capable of doing that. So here's what I've done. I have taught my son to make good decisions. That is me trusting my child. So here's how you make a good decision. Here's how you check in with your body. Does your body feel exhausted or is it ready to go? I've taught him to check the terrain, the snow, the ice, the weather conditions. I've taught him to get practice and to model people who've done this before. Trampolines, airbags, people who know how to do it. I've told him to check in with his ego. Am I doing this to prove it to myself, prove it to other people, to look good in front of someone, to do it because 10 other people have done it? Do you see, it's like there's a framework where I have given him a life lesson. I need you to check in with how to make a good decision. And I've also, because we do believe in something greater in our family, I've told him to make a silent request to the universe, which he does every time to keep him safe. And he does. He would tell you this, and I'm not going to share it because it's intimate and personal, but he does before every jump, every backflip, everything. He does request that level of help and support because we've taught him that you can ask. And if you ask, it might be there for you. So that is me trusting myself as a parent that I've instilled the ability to make a good decision. Not, it's a no, you can't do it, it's dangerous. Do you see?
Yeah.
And then what happens is what happens. Everest, you know, has landed hundreds of backflips. And he also, you know, on a bike broke his collarbone. It's like he's a regular kid. Things are going to happen to him. But there was huge lessons in also him breaking a bone. He's not immune. He's not, you know, made of rubber or plastic. It's like there were huge life lessons for him to go, my physical body is something I need to take care of. So do you think everything has the potential of being something that helps him not only with his present day life, but with the future of what it is that's going to be there for him? So they kind of, they're separate, but they're also always all together in some ways.
Yeah, that was a beautiful example that weaved in all of the things, and I could easily see what what that scene. I think, were you on the Central Park 86th Street Reservoir? Is that where you were?
No, we were a little further down, actually. We were where, not far from the Imagine Circle. So we were probably around 74th, 75th. There's often some musicians that are right around that pond, and there's a big dead tree that goes into the water there. We walk past there, and Everest and I have a giggle about it. You see, it's like it's a solid, you know, memory for us in a good way.
Yes. Okay, a couple of things that we can zoom in even more on here. One, your kind of description of I clean up sometimes, when I'm feeling anger, I want my context as a parent basically to be, I create happiness, therefore happiness is more available in your life. What does cleanup look like for you? It could be in the moment, i.e. something's occurring with Everest and whoa, there's a lot of anger here, there's a lot of frustration, impatience, etc. I'm curious, like, what in the moment practices or ways of being that you use to navigate that, and then maybe like I know sometimes for me, like temperature gets too hot. I'm not able to, I don't have executive function in those moments and might
Yeah.
need to step away. So like, how do you navigate cleanup as a parent?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is I've been cleaning up for years before I was a parent. I was aware because of the childhood I had that there were both extreme emotions, whether it was, grief, sadness, depression, and whether there was anger and rage, because both of those were in my childhood growing up. So of course they're within me. It's not, even though we don't want to be like our mother or our father, emotionally we are bathing in that for 10, 12, 15, 18 years, however long that is. So I was aware that I had tendency towards both of those. So it's one of the reasons I went looking for the books, for the teachers, for the retreats. I was like, this is, that's what I've been shown, right? So, with that said, I did go into my form of coaching for myself, and I still do, because there are always things that are coming up. So to me, the cleanup started way, way, way before. I think when I became a mom, again, I thought, okay, I'm never going on a retreat again. I'm never going to have time to meditate. I'm never going to have time to read. Again, do you see? Because I saw it as two worlds. And what I've realized is I'm in retreat every day with my son, right? It's like I'm in retreat every day with my husband too, by the way. And I'm in retreat every day with life. Like I don't need to ever go to a physical retreat. There have been years where I haven't read any of these books because I feel I've read enough books, and now I actually need to be with what the books have taught me. So it's not I need to do it to feel it. So, if there is a situation where I can feel emotions coming up for me, pick anger as an example, and they appear to be triggered by my child or something externally. There are a couple of things that I do in the moment, and I don't always do these, but I think the more you do them, it's like being in the gym. The more you do them, the more they come much quicker to you. I recognize anger quite quickly. So I will do a couple of things. I will say to myself first, okay, what is this reminding me of? Not what is happening. It's reminding me of my childhood when I couldn't say this or do this. It's reminding me of how I didn't do this. It's reminding me how I was never allowed to be angry as a child. Right? So now my son is angry. I was never allowed to be angry as a child. It was completely not available to me. Right? So what is this reminding me of? That's a very different question of, how do I stop this, or how do I fix this, or how do I, eliminate this? It's immediate. It reminds me of I wasn't allowed to speak back, or I wasn't allowed to be angry, or I wasn't allowed to have a bad day, or I wasn't allowed to be grumpy. Or do you see? So now I kind of go, okay, this is for me to clean up in some ways. So that sort of pulls my temperature down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Another thing that I do quite quickly is I do an immediate scan for what's been going on with me. I had a full day. I had too many coaching calls. I didn't eat lunch. I had a podcast to do. Then I had to walk the dog, and I've had zero time for myself. Nothing to do with what's going on externally. So those two things are, okay, what is this reminding me of? And what is going on with me in that moment? Right? Those are my two ways where I diffuse. If there is an explosion or an argument or something, we do have some cool downs. We will cool down. We allow arguments to happen. I think anger is a very productive emotion, Mike.
Yeah.
Very productive. I talk about it with my adult clients. Productive anger. Anger is a sign of change. Anger is a sign of something isn't right. Like you really need to allow that to be there, especially in children. Do you need to give them ways of expressing it? Of course you do. But stamping it out? Absolutely not. Kids are allowed to be grumpy. Kids are allowed to have a really bad day at school. It's not your job to fix it. It's not your job to get them happy. It's not your job to even get them to love school. It's not your job to do any of that stuff. Your job is to actually allow them to have the experience that they're having. I think children are constant, and I've worked with children, they're constantly feeling like they are not who they want their parents to be. I've got to be this, or I've got to be that. And it's not even just in the doing, it's in the being. I think a couple of repair techniques. We usually go walk the dog. That's one of the things. Emotion is healed through motion. So, for me to be stuck at my desk, or for my son to be in his room, or for my husband to be wherever, emotion is healed through motion. So we have a little bit of that ritual. We go to Central Park, we take the dog, we're next to each other as opposed to facing each other. That also helps. And sometimes just the walking it off, being in nature, it helps. Emotion is healed through motion. That's a big one for us. We do say some things. We use the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And I've taught that to my son from the age of when he could speak, because I don't think kids know how to repair. It's a big thing to know how to repair. Can they learn those 4 lines? Absolutely. They can learn them at any age. And it's one of the sweetest things is having your 3, 4, 5-year-old come to you and go, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And then I say it back, or then he says it, or it's like, who says it first? But there's got to be a moment that's age appropriate to kind of wrap it up. The other thing that we do, and we haven't done it recently, he's a bit older, but when he was younger, before we went to sleep, I would do a body scan on him. And I would say, are there any emotions that need to be let go of? Is there anything that's still stuck in the body? Because I want my son to have a good night of sleep. And at that moment, there's a window where they feel very close to you. They're also very close that they're unconscious, as we all are when we're about to fall asleep. So I want them to access and just go, oh, I'm really sad about having seen that homeless person. Or, that fight that we had, it made me really whatever. But it's like there's a moment there that you can still sort of really, really repair. And so when he was much younger, I would do I'd do an invisible tool, and I'd sort of scan him, and I'd go beep, 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 and I'd go all the way, and then he would be like beep, 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 like if it was in his heart, right? Or if it was in his stomach, beep. And so I would know where in the body he was holding those emotions. But I'm also teaching him to be in his body, Mike, because so many kids, they check out of their body. They don't want to feel what they're feeling. Then they live above the neck. And then it takes a lifetime to pull them back into their body. So it allows them to go, wow, I've got sadness here, or I've got pain here, or I've got, do you see? So it helps keep them in the body. It's so important. It gives me a clue and an indication of what's going on. And then I would very gently go, I'd say to him, Everest, are we ready to let it go? 100% of the time he's ready to let it go. And then I would pull it like it was like slime or glue. And I'd be like, ah. And then I would say, I'm sending this back to the light so that the light can transform it, right? Because it feels dark. And for a child, it's a fun, but you see, it's a fun, beautiful way of getting children to not be scared of their emotions, to realize that emotions pass, they're not permanent, they're not pervasive, and they're not personal. It's the 3 Ps. They're not yours. They're not permanent. They're not pervasive. They're not going to take over your entire life. But do you see, there's an emotional, I'm teaching him about emotional. It's an emotional skill. Can you do it? By the way, if you do meditate, we do that. A lot of meditations. I was
just thinking adults could really stand to benefit from this exercise.
A lot of meditation. What do a lot of meditating teachers do? You scan your body. Right?
Yeah.
So this is the child's version of scanning the body and just knowing, where's the pain, or where's the fear, or does it have something to say before it wants to leave? There's magic in all of that.
At what age did you start doing that with Everest? Asking for a friend. I have a 2-year-old.
Yeah. We started everything really early with Everest. We were reading things to him in utero. We had those belly buds that we put on my belly with like beautiful music that was, just very calming and very relaxing. I would say that particular exercise, and I've been figuring this out as I go along, because even though I'm trained professionally to do this with grown-ups, I've been figuring out the language and the bridge for the children, and I have written a children's book series, and I have done things where I kind of go, God, what is the language to teach these skills to the young ones? It's one of the reasons I put out these books. I think with that particular one, I mean, I remember doing it when he was 3 or 4 in Cape Town.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to do with noises is fun. Anything to do. Here's the other thing I want to say is that children are much more of touch than they are auditory, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So anything that involves touching them, if you want to tell your kid to do his homework or to clean up or to take a bath, using words is not going to do it. I think most parents have realized that. If you go over and you get their eye contact and you put your hand on their shoulder or you grab their hand, at that point you have a connection, and at that point you're in communication with them. But the whole my kid doesn't listen, they're not meant to listen. The part of their brain that has to do with auditory function and listening and words is not as developed as the one that is to do with touch. I mean, think about it. Like, babies need touch. They don't need words. So I would really encourage people to, go physically connect with your child, and then you will have the connection and you will be able to sort of, inform what it is that you want to change. So definitely that exercise. I don't think there's any age. I think there's an age if you see your child as a physical specimen. I think if you see it as there's a soul in this small body, the soul might be a lot older and more evolved and wiser than you are.
Yeah. Okay, noted. We got a fun little homework assignment for tonight. A good new Friday night activity that I can participate in.
Beautiful.
I was very touched by that.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful exercise.
We have lots of little things like that. We have lots of tools. We do say grace and thank you as a family, and we lead it individually. Everest has been leading grace since he was 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And he says a prayer, and he thanks, and he asks, and he acknowledges, and we find out about his day even when he's doing that. Mm-hmm. Little things. I think, we all love routines. I think they're important for families. But that is one that we have done in airports, on airplanes, in restaurants. We don't care who's looking, If anything, I think it's an example for a lot of families of what's possible. It's just a moment of presence.
Yeah. Something we haven't touched on yet, but we're going to touch on now, obviously. The creation, it sounds like it was mostly from Everest, KidQuest, that happened during boring, what else are we going to do, COVID.
Yes.
And I'm curious, we've been speaking a lot about contexts that you have been intentional about creating. And one way that I look at creating context is through questions that kind of pierce. Questions can be really a wonderful way to pierce through old, outgrown patterns. And so KidQuest, although I haven't opened the game, it's a game of questions. I'm curious, you could talk a little bit about how the game was created, but I'm more curious about, like, what are the types of questions and what has emerged from playing the game and asking the questions?
Yeah. So KidQuest was born, during COVID. Everest was 7, 8 years old, and he started being fascinated with how we were as kids. So there was this deluge of questions towards my husband and I of things like, did we get pocket money? Did we have stitches? Did we have a pet? Were we naughty at school? What was the favorite thing we did with our grandparents? How old were we when we, learned to ski? It was consistent. Did we ever, how were we punished? And what was our favorite subject? Or did you have a pandemic when you were a kid? It's like, and I was noticing that through those questions, he was getting to know a part of us that was very different than you're the adult, I'm the kid. he was indirectly learning life lessons through our answers. So I didn't have to talk to him about things. I just had to tell him a story about my experience of that thing. And from that point, he would learn. Did you save money? Instead of me going, Everest, you're 7 years old. We need to talk about you saving some of your pocket money. I mean, that's not going to land very well. But when he says, well, what did you do with your pocket money? I can talk about, I bought Smurfs because I was obsessed with Smurfs, and I saved some money because I wanted to do certain things. What did you save for? So now I've had an indirect conversation about what to do with money, which is less than parenting, I forgot to have the money conversation, or I haven't had the, here's what you do if you're naughty at school conversation. So both of us, and Everest then started using it with my father, who is, 89 these days. At the time was, in his early 80s. And I started seeing a complete change in their relationship, where instead of it being, here's an 80-year-old man who's very fit and healthy, but, he's a conservative, older gentleman. Suddenly he saw my father as like a 7-year-old. Oh, my father was naughty. I learned all these things about my father when he was a kid, and that my father had a cuddly toy, and my father did this, and who my father's first crush was. And so suddenly they had a connection which was completely different. And it was like suddenly my father was this really fun guy who he knew all these things about, who he would never have had access to. And by the way, myself had never had access to. And I thought, there is something stunningly beautiful and miraculous in what I'm seeing as possible in terms of relationship building across generations. I learned stuff about my husband, who I'd been married to for 15 years, where I was like, what? Just because of one of those questions about how he had pet rats and things. I was like, what am I hearing? And then Everest was like, I wonder if other kids would like this game. It wasn't a game. It was like, I wonder if other kids are also asking. Because, there are divorced parents, and there are step parents, and there are parents-in-law, and there's grandparents, and it's like there's caretakers and nannies and godparents, and there are people who don't have kids, and there's adults there. And it's sort of, we started seeing it very broad. And for the fun of it, I wrote down all his questions. There was hundreds of them, and we were like, we're not going to put 200 questions. It's going to be a big, big game. And then one of the things that I have never been shown as a child is that I could be an entrepreneur. I was told to go be a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, or, have a safe job. And I would have loved to be shown or given permission not to have the fear, not to feel like, it's an unsafe path. And I thought, wouldn't this be a fun thing to show my son that at 7 or 8, we can put something out and he can be an entrepreneur and he can literally see it in the world. And so I've never been in the toy industry. I've never done a game. I've never done any of that. It really was a learning curve for both. He was in charge of product. So he come up with the name, Kid Quest, kids going on a quest, or kids asking questions. We looked into trademarking, which we got. He did the colors. We found a designer. He picked the questions. He divided them into categories: school, home, friends, money, big emotions. So he did all of that. I did the budget, of course. I paid for it. I did the legal stuff. I got it up on Amazon, which is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And then we launched it, to make a long story short. Yeah. And I honestly, even if it had just been that, all my goals were met, right? In terms of showing him what's possible, and not having to wait until he's a certain age to do it. And then I told all my friends and family, and I thought we're going to sell, 30 copies. And we sold 200 copies in the first week on Amazon. We did launch it a couple of weeks before Christmas. We did sell it as a stocking stuffer, less than $20. It's a card game. It's a family, sort of connection game. And then I was like, wow, maybe there's something here. I've been an entrepreneur, so I'm kind of looking for the signs. And I thought, let's just put a bit of money behind some press and social media and see what happened. Very long story short, last week we got the Parents Award, which is a big deal. I mean, Parents Magazine, they said, this is the best card game that they've seen this year. We got the Mom's Choice Award. We got the toy industry. I mean, it was like, Do you see, talk about the universe just going, this needs to be in the world and we will help you and we just need you to take the action behind it. We sold it to a big publisher. It's been an amazing experience. I went through the contract with Everest. I told him what a royalty was. I told him what an advance was. Now he hates school because he feels like he should just be an entrepreneur. But I think the bigger purpose beyond just him and what he's learned from this and having that be an opening for him if he wants to go do that, is what I've seen it do for other families. And connecting teenagers who don't have access, and they're prompts, in the age of AI. These are real life prompts for families that some of them are laugh out loud, and some of them will move you emotionally and go, I'm so glad I've heard that story because I might never have heard it.
Is there an example of a couple of like you started to talk about how it really, especially standing out with your father, how this kind of like serious conservative man, you started to see him as a 7-year-old. What were the specific types of questions that are being asked that allowed that to happen? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the big one was, were you ever naughty as a kid? And we heard like 5 stories of how he was naughty, which I'm going to keep private.
Of course.
Of course. We heard about, with him specifically, there was a lot of, my son's never seen him play soccer. And he heard that, because he wasn't playing soccer in his 80s. But it normalized that this was someone who, played instruments and had friends that he could relate to and read the same books, like some of the kids' books he had read. So it's not that he completely changed. It's just that he was revealed.
Yeah.
As an entirely whole and complete human being, which I don't think children have access to. They see you as the father or the mother. They don't see you as someone who did these things or hated school or loved history or, had a crush or went to see a movie with it. Like, they don't see you that way. How could they? Because they've never seen you that way. So it's like showing them a whole bunch of old movies about your life. And it's kind of giving them glimpses. And some are hard movies, which they also need to know because we're not protecting our children from the hard stuff. Some of the questions are very profound. Like, when did you first experience failure? Or, when was a time that you were really sad as a child? We don't ignore any of those. Or when did you first experience death as a child? We don't hide from any of that stuff because Everest was asking that. Is it the death of a pet? Was it the death of a grandparent? Was it like, do you see? So it allows you to go into life through the grown-ups experience where the kid kind of, again, it can learn what it needs to through you as opposed to preparing them for when that's going to happen to them.
Really beautiful.
It's a beautiful game. It's really sweet. Tell. And it's, it's $12. It's an amazing gift. We've given it to teachers and schools who've played it with the kids because, again, kid-teacher relationship. It's like it normalizes.
Yeah.
We had Everest teacher in Switzerland was talking about when, she was vomited on. And the kids were rolling around laughing. And so, of course, now they see her as this really fun teacher. And all they imagine is her having been vomited on by her friend and what happened. And do you see? So there's humor, but there's really deep connection. And it changes the respect level. It changes, how you interact with people. And it teaches compassion, teaches empathy. All of these things I never even imagined. It was just a game for me.
Well, there's, there's so many different things that we could continue to talk about. I want to check in with you. Is there anything in particular around parenthood that we haven't spoken about so far? Any I's you want to dot, T's you want to cross, threads that are unfinished? And if not, I'm curious about more complex children, the adults that you're working with, and themes that you have seen as you work with adults in a time that a lot of people are characterizing as very crazy and rapidly evolving. And so I'm curious what you have seen in the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. So the one thing I want to just speak about briefly is for all the people who are not parents, that one of the things that I wanted to contribute into the world was to help people become parents who want to become parents, because there is a huge crisis these days of people who really, really would like to bring in a child in some form, potentially naturally, potentially in another form. And I've seen it in my adult children, the pain and the suffering of not being able to conceive or not being able to have children. I was like, I need to do something in this space. And for our own journey, our Everest came very quickly, no issues there. And we did try for many years to have more children, and we were not able to. And in the many years, I did everything I could, from a trying perspective, a research perspective, the most scientific things to the most alternative things. And because I did all of that, I was like, I need to gift this. I need to gift this to the world. I need to give this to people, because there is someone out there that's going to be able to take all of this, and there is going to be a key or a piece of the puzzle for them in that journey, as opposed to like, well, that was a wonderful sort of experience and research. And for reasons that life knows best, we have our one and only Everest, and we have our enoughness, and our beautiful golden retriever Waffle too, who's staring at me. He's part of the tribe. But that book, I'm launching it soon, even though it's already available on Amazon. The book is called Spirit Mama, and it's a more conscious journey through motherhood, through conception, through fertility, and a little bit of what I feel is the missing piece in that whole puzzle, which is the emotional, the bigger life going on around. So that is something I would be remiss, and I would feel like I'm not helping people out by speaking. And if it's not for you, it might be for a friend, not you personally, but for you, it might be for someone that needs to hear that. It's a book that I feel is highly needed. I mean, I'd take my name off it and I'd give it away for free to whoever, because I know what that journey is like, and I know the level of pain and suffering, and I know that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. That seems like an incredible gift. Yes. Yeah. So I'll definitely make sure that Kid Quest will be linked in the show notes. Spirit Mama will be linked in the show notes.
Beautiful.
And yes, let's get into what are you seeing in the complex babies that you're working with?
So that the bigger humans. I'm seeing a few things. I'm seeing a pandemic of uncertainty, where everyone is uncertain about a lot of things, and it's hard to find certainty externally. It's hard to find it in your spouse. It's hard to find it in your kid's trajectory. It's hard to find it in the stock market, crypto, politics, work. It's hard to find it in AI. It's hard to find it. And I think we're at a point where we're at a frontier where you have to find that certainty in something else, and you have to find that certainty inside. And that is a wake-up call for people, and they don't quite know how to do that, where everything else was predictable and now it's not predictable. So you got to go find that part of you that doesn't change. Crazy change requires crazy trust in something else, not in I hope things don't change for me, if they haven't already yet changed for you. So the certainty piece, I think, if you're a business person, the person that can embody crazy certainty will win. The founder that embodies crazy certainty will get funded. The person who wants a job that embraces certainty will get the job. But where is that certainty coming from, right? It's a way of being. So I think leadership right now, there's a certainty frontier, I think there is a likability frontier where more and more people now are not tolerating people who are unkind, inauthentic, not likable, not human. Like, people are just not tolerating it anymore. And so there's a check-in. How likable am I? How human am I? How authentic am I? And still be able to lead, a billion-dollar company. I have many people in my purview who do those things, but those are not second-class questions. Those are, you will lose talent, and you will not hire talent, and you will not get funded if you're not likable. People work with people they like nowadays. So the certainty frontier, the likability frontier, the humanity frontier. I think the other thing I'm seeing is that people want to feel like they are adding value and being of service, whether they can word it that way or whether I notice that. But there is a part of people where that is becoming a more important human need than it was in the past. I think the need for significance was higher before. The need for money was higher before. And I'm not talking about it generationally, even though I know there's, people like blocking generations into labels. I don't like doing it. I think you can wake up at 30 and you can wake up at 50 and you can be, in service at 25 or 55. It doesn't even matter. I do feel nowadays that people are asking the big questions of what is worth doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Or, am I actually contributing anything of value with my, 12-hour day? It's just in the consciousness. It might not be verbalized, but it's in the consciousness. And because of that, there's a different filter and there's a different need for a conversation, especially in a coaching environment or a leadership, advisory environment, where they want to have those conversations with someone who is not their spouse and not their board and not their investor and not their co-founder, because it's hard to do it with when it might require a change in your identity or a change in your work or a change in your lifestyle. It's hard to explore that, but yet the exploration has definitely started.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more depth that we can get into, and it's impossible to solve for things in a 1-minute question here, but I'm curious. Let's take the certainty one. I think that's one that, and I know, I'm not removing myself from a question like this. This is something that I might cling onto, although I'm working through that, a number in my bank account or a certain way that my career is going or a certain way that life looks like it's trending is all can go kaput in just a moment. Yeah. So when someone is working on locating certainty within themselves, like if someone's listening to this and is feeling like, yeah, I could use some of that, where might they begin, or what's something useful that person could do to start to anchor more certainty within themselves?
Yeah. I think it's hard to sort of go, this applies for everyone. I think I would pull on the resources that life has already given each person, which is different. So you have had moments where you have exercised a level of clarity, faith, certainty in yourself and your choices. Everyone has already got that toolbox, right? Like whether it's what you went through at home, whether it's what you saw with your parents, whether it's going to college or not, whether it's your first job, whether it's a diagnosis, whether it's you stopping smoking, getting over depression, a breakup, it's like cancer. Like every single person has had already, up until this point where you're listening, moments where you have a toolbox. Now, the human being tends to forget that for a couple of reasons. One is you never acknowledged yourself at the time. I'm the woman that got through that, or I'm the guy that dealt with this, right? We're not good at acknowledgement or reminding. And so the brain remembers it. So, which is why, the body remembers it, right? There's books nowadays that are showing that the body remembers everything you've ever been through. The fact that there is a part of you that the reptilian brain, the lizard brain, the fight or flight, which is, new environment, 17th, like what's going on? It feels new, but there are parts of you that are absolutely prepared. Even though the situation looks new, the tools that you might use might not be new. Like I know when I've had to use that faith muscle for myself. I know when I've had to use that grit and discipline and patience muscle. It will change. This is not a forever thing. I know when I've had to use I will get through this muscle when it's been unbelievable. I know I can feel it even just speaking. Like I'm literally getting the events and all the benefit of those events. I'm not getting all the suffering of the events, but I can feel, I know that I've given birth to a 10-pound baby, right? Like I know if I really have to do something hard, like getting in a cold plunge pool. My husband's obsessed with cold plunges. There are times where I remind myself that I'm the woman that did that. And then I can go, do you see that? That's such a practical example. I'm the woman that I can absolutely get in that water for 5 minutes, even though it's ridiculously cold. Do you see? So I've been better at reminding myself of those moments of clarity and absolute certainty. And everyone has those. And when I do workshops with people, I make them remember what is on your change resume or what is on your certainty resume, your CV or whatever you want to call it, because it is full. It is packed. Everyone has one. Do you see there's like a power that comes from that. I can feel it in me, which is like, what do you want me to do? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you apply it to what appears like a new situation, but the resources are there. And you might get another new resource that you can add to your toolbox, but really, what is in your toolbox? That's the question I would ask people.
Let's go. I love that.
Yep.
I could feel how powerful that level of acknowledgement is within yourself, and that all of us have a CV that we can pull from, that we've all been through a lot. Yeah.
My husband and I did a crazy ultra marathon trail run a couple of months ago. We were barely trained, right? It was in Switzerland, 12,000 feet of elevation. And it was nearly a 50K run. And you know what? We did it. Like we did it. It took us nearly 15 hours. We arrived after midnight. But I mean, there is a memory of not giving up, getting through it, pushing past the pain, and knowing that the body can handle it, even though the mind is going, no, stop. Do you see? Now, can I apply that to something that might happen in the next few days or weeks? Of course I can, even though I'll probably never do that one again.
This has been a blast, Ariane. I have just a couple of more questions that I would love to ask you. Before that, I'll just check in with you. Is there anything that we haven't addressed so far in the conversation today that you would like to bring in now? Any other things you'd like to say, resources you'd want to point people to, anything at all?
The thing, none of this conversation will make any sense or can even be possible without focusing on your physical health. It's impossible, and it's one of my favorite quotes. You can have 1,000 dreams and 1,000 goals, 1,000 ideas and 1,000 plans. But if you don't have your health, you only have one. I say this to everyone I speak to. I'm not up for a conversation about fundraising or parenting or anything unless the plate that holds your life together has been looked at and addressed. So I don't need to have a big conversation about health, but there is parenting from an unhealthy place doesn't work. Building a business from an unhealthy place doesn't work. Being in a relationship with someone from an unhealthy place doesn't work. And so, I have a book on health. I am obsessed in a healthy way with health because I've seen what happens to others when that is not in place and everything changes. So instead of waiting for that everything change moment, that is the first place to go. Not, I'm not a good parent, or, I should make my kid be an entrepreneur. None of that matters. There's no sense of, there's nothing missing. It's more, what is my physical body, which is also your emotional body. This is the part that is showing up in the world. So that's the missing.
Yeah.
We don't need to have a big chat about it, but I think people know that, but knowing is different than living it. Like, to me, health is in my identity.
Yes.
It is not on my to-do list. I have never had a not healthy day. Doesn't mean I haven't eaten pancakes and Swiss chocolate and, stayed up late. But in that day, I've probably gone for a walk, or I've probably done some breathing exercises, or I've had a green juice, or I've taken my supplements. Do you see, it's like, I've never had a non-healthy day. Some element of it has been healthy. So switching it from the to-do list, which is, I know, that's obvious, Ariane, to the it's in my identity is huge for me.
We might need to do a part 2 to unpack all of that. To do health, because my initial soiree into coaching was through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and we don't need to get into all that, but health was really one of the foundational pillars that really opened the door into personal growth for me as well. So I really firmly, I share that belief with you that it's what makes us available for a conversation like this. 100%.
And it changes everything. It changes how your brain functions. It changes your hormones. It changes whether you're exhausted or sluggish. It's like there's not much coaching or therapy or podcasts available for that stuff. It really is how your body feels is how you can show up in the world.
Just very quickly, is this something, if a client is coming to you and is maybe ostensibly wanting to work on maybe I want to be an entrepreneur, or maybe I want to do X, and you can sense that well-being isn't a priority? Is that like we start there, we work on that?
100%. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't go anywhere without it. It's impossible. If you are not healthy, you will not build a healthy business. You won't. And, if I need to poke people, I say that, people scan you instantly. Like we do it as humans all the time. You can call it scanning, you can call it judging, you can call it anything you want. But people scan unhealthy people quite quickly, and it gives them a lot of information about you and what's important and what your priorities are. And I think health is a big new leadership frontier, because you're either a warning or an example. You might be an example in the revenue category, but you're a warning in the health category. Like, why not be both? Really, why not be both? This whole thing is about it's about being both. It's not I can't do both. There are so many examples nowadays of people being both. It's a choice.
Well, to be continued. There's so much more to get into here, but I have 2 more questions for you. One, so I have the organization written up on the board here. It is called, forgive me if I do not get the pronunciation right, but Kaigololo Academy, is that right?
Yeah, Kigololo.
Kigololo Academy. Okay. So I always raise awareness for an organization of my guest choice, and I will donate to Kigololo Academy.
Thank you.
Could you just say a word or 2 about them
so
and what they do?
Kigololo is a wonderful school that was started in one of the poorest townships of South Africa, where there are usually no schools, and the kids don't have either the transportation or the adult even to get to a school in another township. So it's a township called Alexandria. It's outside of Soweto in Johannesburg. With my husband being from Johannesburg, having grown up through apartheid, my son being born there, it was very important. And South Africa has had my heart even before any of the 2 of them showed up in my life. It was important for us as a family to do something for the country. It's a beautiful school that has nearly 200 students of the poorest of the poor, and we give things. So in science class, if they need a globe, we literally will buy them a globe. And we see the globe, and the kids see the globe, and my son sees the globe. If they need, history books, if they need backpacks. So it's not just a, here's some money and, I hope something good happens. You can literally buy actual things that they need, which I think more and more of us want to feel and see, instead of tick, I got a tax donation, or tick, I did something good for a school in South Africa. So if you, whatever it is that you love or want to donate, it's a wonderful place. They will take everything. The kids send us videos. I'm sure they'll send you a video, Mike, if you send anything to them. It's just such a human, beautiful experience where you feel connected. If you ever go to South Africa, please go visit them.
Absolutely.
So that's a few words.
Yeah. Well, this will be joining the show notes with Kid Quest and Spirit Mama, and I will make a mention in the introduction to this episode as well. Asking people to join me in making a donation. Sounds like a beautiful cause. Yeah.
They have a PayPal account. It's very easy, in and out. It means a lot. Like $20 for them is a big deal.
Yes. Well, roger that. I will be a contributor in short notice, in short order. So the final question, Ariane, that I ask in every single interview, and it's always, by this point in the conversation, a lot of ways it's been addressed already, but let's ask really specifically, what does it mean to you to live a meaningful life?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear what's coming to me. I always kind of tune in and kind of go, is this from my head, or is it from more of my higher self? To me, a meaningful life is when I am aligned with what my soul came here to be, do, feel, and experience. So this soul definitely wanted a very adventurous life. On all continents, with lots of fun and lots of humans and lots of diversity. So it's not, the soul wants, to, initially it was, let's just fully experience the absolute extremes of what's possible in a human lifetime. And I think with age, the soul also wants me to really be in service to my fellow human beings. So it's definitely those two things. And I think if one was taken away, I would feel my life had lost meaning. And if both were taken away, I would feel like I need to very quickly get back on track. I know that in my moments of suffering, one or two of those have been missing.
Well,
it's a great question.
Thank you for sharing your gifts with my audience, and I've been touched by your presence and the way that you serve people and the way that you look at this whole thing of life that we're all playing here. I learned a lot in the conversation. I know that anyone who's tuned in here is going to, if they're taking care of their health and well-being, is going to get something out of this conversation. Anyone who's remotely open to receiving guidance and wisdom and really growing their capacity for change and all the beautiful things that we talked about is going to get something out of this conversation. So thank you for being here. It was well worth the wait.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for creating the space to be real and authentic and share and just, have the conversations we did. You're good with the questions too. Maybe you should do a card game.
Let's see. Maybe in a few years, me and my son will be really bored and, hey, let's make up something really fun. Let's ask some good questions that are going to make people laugh and heal old patterns and dynamics. Let's go ahead and do that.
You never know what it sparks, one thing you hear and it's sort of, that's what's available for you today. That's what I hope.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and sending each of you lots of love. Take good care.
Thank you. Much love.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to Mike's Search for Meaning. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and leave a review. I look forward to seeing you next time, my friends. And until then, stay safe, stay well, and keep living with purpose. Peace.